Hello and shalom, brothers and sisters of Messiah Yeshua. Welcome back. I'm Jeremy, and this is Millennial, Day 3 of Creation. Let's get started. So in Millennial, Day 3 of Creation, we're going to look at the literal Day 3 of Creation and how it foreshadows the 2,000 to 3,000 year period known as Millennial, Day 3. We're not going to do an overview of Day 2 like we would normally do because I did that in the megalithic millennium teaching. And so with that said, let's go ahead and continue. Alright, so Day 3 is found in Genesis 1:9, and it starts out by saying, "And God said, Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good." It continues, "And God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the third day." Alright, so let's get into this. Now before we get started, I wanted to read from the Book of Wisdom here. And remember, this was part of the Apocrypha, and it was part of your Bible until the 1500s when it was taken out. So for 1,500 to 1,600 years, it was part of your Bible. And it says, "For in the old time," speaking of before the flood, "also when the proud giants perished." Now we saw that all of the giants perished before the flood. If you haven't seen the megalithic millennium teaching, I encourage you to go back and watch that. It says, "The hope of the world governed by thy hand escaped in a weak vessel, and left to all ages a seed of generation." So I want to look at this carefully. It says, "The hope of the world governed by thy hand," speaking of God's hand. Well, who's God's right hand? It's Yeshua. Yeshua is God's right hand. He's his right arm. And so this is the hope, right? We know that Noah was the one that escaped. And it says, "The hope of the world governed by thy hand." Is that not our hope today? That Yeshua is going to return and rule and reign for 1,000 years. And when he does, we will be changed. And the dead Messiah will rise with new bodies. We will have eternal bodies, not of flesh and blood, but something else. So this is the hope. And this was this seed of generation. So the seed of generation was the hope of Messiah and his reign, his rule. Because remember, we've looked at this many times, that Satan is the god of this world. And Yeshua says that his kingdom is not of this world, but his reign is in a world to come. And things will be changed then. And we'll look at that going forward. People will live again to be almost 1,000 years old. Those that are Yeshua's will live eternal because they will have eternal bodies. But the world will see rest. And this is the hope of the world governed by thy hand, Yeshua. And this is the seed of generation. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Alright, also I'm going to, just to establish a time frame here, this is from the book of Jasher. It says, "And at the expiration of 2 years from Abraham's going out of the fire," that is in the 52nd year of his life. So the 52nd year of Abram's life would make it the year 2000 after creation. Because we know from Genesis in the timeline that Abraham was born 1,948 years after creation, or 1948. So 52 years later puts us at 2000, which is the very start of Millennial Day 3, from 2000 to 3000. And it says, "Behold, King Nimrod sat in Babel upon the throne." So Nimrod was king over Babel, and we're going to learn that this is the start of Millennial Day 3. Alright, and it says, "And the whole earth was of one language and one speech." And where were they? They're at Babel. And who's the king? It's Nimrod. "And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there." Again, they're at Babel. Alright, "And God said, Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place." So real quick, let's look at those waters again. From Revelation 17:15, we've said this many times before. And he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples, multitudes, and nations and tongues. So waters are people. Okay? And it goes on to say they were gathered together unto one place. Okay, well in Genesis 11:6 it says, and Yahweh said, behold, the people is one, and they have one language. And this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So they are one language, one people. Just as on day 3, he gathered the waters together unto one place, here the people are gathered together unto one place. Alright, and then it goes on to say, and let dry land appear, and it was so. Well, at the same time it says, now Yahweh said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show you. So he's going to show him the land, and the land's going to appear to him, the dry land. Because it goes on to say, and God called the dry land earth, Eretz, and that's what he said, go to an Eretz that I will show you. Okay, and it goes on to say, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. So the waters originally under the heaven were gathered together in one place. All the people under the heaven were gathered together unto one place at Babel. On day 3, he says, let the dry land appear. On millennial day 3, he tells Abraham, come and I will take you to a land. I will show you a land and it will appear to you. And now he's saying that he's going to, the waters under the heaven, he's going to call them seas. So here we see it says, Yahweh scattered them abroad from hence on the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. So they quit building Babel, and they went off to make their own cities, but they didn't make them. They went around the world and they found them already created that were left over from the flood. And if you see the megalithic millennium video, you'll see that. And it goes on to say, but these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families in their nations. So on day 3, he takes the waters and he calls them seas, many waters. And here we see he changes their languages now and makes them no more one people, but multiple peoples, the Gentiles, the nations. It goes on, and God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed. Okay, so this is very important now. Notice here the grass and the herb are connected together and they bring forth seed. Alright, Psalms 22:7, it says, when the wicked spring as the grass, and when all the workers of iniquity do flourish, that they shall be destroyed forever. So the grass will be destroyed. It goes on in Psalm 37:2, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. It goes on in Isaiah 40, verse 6. The voice said, cry, and he said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all the goodliness thereof is as the flower of the field. Isaiah 40, verse 7, it says, the grass withereth and the flower fadeth, because the spirit of Yahweh bloweth upon it. Surely the people is grass. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever. Continues again in Peter, 1 Peter 1:2, he says, being born again, not of the corruptible seed, but of incorruptible, by the word of God, which liveth and abideth forever. For all flesh is as grass, and all the glory of man as the flower of grass. The grass withereth, and the flower fadeth away. However, in Romans 8:9, right, it says, but you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so that the Spirit of God dwell in you. Now, if any man have not the Spirit of Messiah, he is none of his. So remember, we've read from wisdom that the hope of the reign of Messiah was the seed of generation. And if you are Messiah's, the Spirit dwells in you. And if you have the Spirit of Messiah in you, that seed is in you. Because here we're looking at two different seeds. The seed of the grass, which is of the world, it will be cut down and withereth. But we're going to move on to look at the seed of Messiah. All right. Before we do that, we have to look at this men as trees again. I know we talked about this in Millennial Day 1, but I want to go over it again here. In Mark 8:23, so this parable always confused me. It says, "And he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw anything. And he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. After that, he put his hands again upon his eyes and made him look up, and he was restored and saw every man clearly." So I always thought, why did it take the Messiah twice to heal this guy's eyes? That's very confusing. But remember, everything in the Bible is there for a reason. It's to teach us, it's to tell us to dig deeper. So here he's telling us before we can see clearly, we have to see men as trees. And we talked about that, the two trees in the garden and who they were. But let's continue on. In Isaiah 61:3 it says, "To appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of Yahweh, that he might be glorified." So here we're referred to as trees. In Jeremiah 11:19, this is speaking of Yeshua, "But I was like a lamb or an ox that is brought to the slaughter. And I knew not that they had devised devices against me, saying, Let us destroy the tree with the fruit thereof, and let us cut him off from the land of the living, that his name may be no more remembered." So here Yeshua is referred to as a tree. Now let's go and continue reading. And it says, "And the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth," and it was so. So from wisdom we already saw that the seed is the hope of Messiah. But we're also going to see that that seed is the Messiah. In Enoch, it says, "Afterwards, in the third week." So again, we're establishing a timeline here. Now, if you read this, this is the prophecy of weeks, and each week is a period of 700 years. So this is the third week, which means it's from the year 1400 to 2100. But it says during its completion. So at the end of the third week, which would be the year 2000, is when we're starting. So this is the Millennial Day 3. Okay? It says, during its completion, a man of the plant of righteousness. So this man is not the plant of righteousness, but he is of the plant of righteousness. And it's either speaking of Abraham or Noah. I believe it's Abraham, though, because it's the third millennial day. It says, judgment shall be selected, and after him the plant of righteousness shall come forever. Okay? So Abraham is the one that's going to be of the plant of righteousness. That means the seed of this plant or of this tree is going to be in him. All right, so let's continue looking at some of these. "You have called your name a green olive tree, fair and of goodly fruit. With the noise of the great tumult he was kindled fire upon it, and the branches thereof are broken." Okay, continuing looking at the trees. In Isaiah 10:18, "And shall consume the glory of his forest, and of his fruitful field, both soul and body." And remember, that's two deaths, right? The first death is of the body. Second death is body and soul. And the soul will be destroyed forever. "And they shall be as when the standard bearer fainteth, and the rest of the trees of his forest shall be few, that a child may write them." Right? So he has a forest, and they are trees in his forest. In Matthew 7:17, Yeshua says, "Even so every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth forth not good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire." Okay? And where do we see this? We get it from Deuteronomy 20:19 and 20. It says, "When you shall besiege a city a long time in making war against it to take it, you shall destroy the trees, thereof by forcing an axe against them, for you may eat of them. Sorry, it says, you shall not destroy the trees thereof by forcing an axe against them, for you may eat of them, and you shall not cut them down. For the tree of the field is the man's life, to employ them in the siege. So he's saying here, a fruit-bearing tree you cannot cut down. And then in 20, it goes on to say, only the trees which thou knowest that they may not be, that they be not trees for meat, you shall destroy and cut them down. And you shall build bulwarks against the city that maketh war with you until it is subdued. So here it's saying that the trees that don't bear fruit, you cut down. The trees that bear fruit, you cannot. And so finishing up Genesis 1:12, and the earth brought forth grass, herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the first day, or the third day, sorry. So you have two different seeds here. The grass herb yielding seed, which withereth and bloweth away and is gone, or the tree that has the seed, his seed in itself, and that seed continues on. Okay, so with that, what you're seeing here, we're going to look at is the two covenants. We have the two covenants, the two ways of life. You're either in the darkness or you're in the light. You have the belief in Messiah or you don't. Everything is one or the other of those. And if you haven't seen Millennial Day 1 of Creation, and I go into explaining that there. So let's look at the covenants real quick. We're only going to do a brief overview here, and I'll actually do a full teaching of the new covenant after Millennial Day 4 of Creation. But let's look at it, because we're talking about Abraham at this point, right? And so in Galatians 4:2 it says, for it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by the bondwoman and the other by the free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh. So remember what we read about the flesh? The flesh is the grass with the seed in itself, right? It withereth and goeth away. But the other seed is the seed of promise. And we're going to see that. It says, but he of the free woman was by promise. Okay, so here you have the two seeds and the two covenants. It goes on to say, which things are an allegory, for these are the two covenants. Right? We know that there were more covenants given, but these are the two covenants of the kingdom and the world. Yeshua's people and the people of the world. Okay? It says, for these are the two covenants, the one from Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Hagar. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage with her children, or her seed. Okay, the grass yielding seed. So this, right now, we're looking at the first covenant, and it's a picture of Mount Sinai and the woman Hagar, which is Jerusalem. Okay, the earthly, the worldly. Now let's continue on. It says, but Jerusalem, which is above, New Jerusalem, is free, which is the mother of us all. So this is a picture of Sarah. For it is written, rejoice, O barren, that beareth not, break forth and cry, thou that travailest not. For the desolate hath many more children than she which hath a husband. Okay, so we'll look at that verse in Isaiah here in just a second, but at this point I want to point out that this is the seed of promise, right? Because Sarah was Abraham and Sarah were promised to have a child. But instead of waiting for the promise, they went the fleshly route, took Hagar, and she bore him a son, and his son is going to have 12 princes. But they are of the world, right? They will not receive, they are not the heirs. But it's through the promise that one day that child will be born to Sarah. And that is the promise. And that is a picture of one, Yeshua, and two, the believers. And we'll see that going forward. All right, so let's look at that from Isaiah 54:1. Sing, O barren one. She's barren, heavenly Jerusalem, because her children have not been born yet. They're waiting for the birth, waiting for the resurrection. She's barren because she's desolate. Her children aren't in her because we can't go there right now. Yeshua says no man can enter the kingdom or see it till he is born from above, right? And Yeshua says flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Okay, so we have to put on our new glorious garments to be able to enter into the kingdom, right? The kingdom is here now because the Ruach HaKodesh is here. But we cannot enter the kingdom, the heavenly, until we're born again or born from above. It goes on to say, who did not bear, break forth in singing and cry aloud, you who have not been in labor, for the children of the desolate one, Sarah, will be more than the children of her who is married, Hagar. Okay, so it goes on. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of promise. We're waiting to be born. But as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the Spirit, even so now. So this is where the Bible is talking about that those in the Spirit, they mourn for what's happening in this world, because Hasatan is the god of this world, and there's war, there's hatred, there's lust, there's jealousy, there's abortion, there's adultery, there's all these things that we're just tired. We're tired of being persecuted, and we are waiting for that glorious kingdom. This is why we're the children of the promise, and that seed is in us. Yeshua's Spirit dwells within us, and he is our down payment and our guarantee that we will be resurrected into the eternal kingdom. It goes on, nevertheless, what saith the scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman, or the herb, grassy, yielding seed, right, is cast out, just like we read, that it's cut down, shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. So they will not inherit the kingdom, right? You have to have the faith and belief that the promise is there, and then do the works that he says to do. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free. We are not children of the world, but we are children of the Spirit. We are waiting for the world to come, Yeshua's kingdom, to rule and reign with him in love, in peace. In Hebrews 12:22 it says, but you are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. So here we know Mount Zion is the city of God, and it is New Jerusalem, it's heavenly Jerusalem. And she is also pictured by Sarah. And to an innumerable company of angels, to a general assembly in the church, and the firstborn which are written in heaven. We're not in heaven yet, but we are written in heaven. And to God the judge of all, and to the spirit of the just men made perfect. When we put on our glorious garments, we'll be made perfect. It goes on to say in Hebrews 12:24, and to Yeshua the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of the sprinkling that speaketh better things than that of Abel. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and you shall call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. Okay, that seed, what is that seed? Well, we're going to find out. It goes on. So about Isaac, the covenant is established with him and that seed. But it says, and as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. We're going to look at that set time. It's the book of Jubilees tells us actually when he was born. All right, but it goes on. Therefore she, Sarah, said unto Abraham, cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. It goes on to say, and God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, speaking of Ishmael, and because of thy bondwoman. In all that Sarah has said unto you, hearken unto her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. And also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. So both are Abraham's seed. Ishmael, which is going to have 12 princes, but they're the worldly, and Isaac, which is going to have the seed of promise within him, the seed of Yeshua, the seed of belief. And Isaac will walk and do the things according to what Yeshua says. Because if his seed is in us, we will be like him. We will do the things that he does. It goes on, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made, right? Well, there was 2 seeds there. Just like on Millennial Day 3, or on literal creation Day 3, we see 2 seeds. In Millennial Day 3, we see 2 seeds. The seed of the fruit tree and the seed of the grass. One withereth and is cast off, the other one bears fruit and continues. He says, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and the 2 seeds as of many, but as one, and to thy seed, which is Messiah. So that seed that came forth on Millennial Day 3 and Creation Day 3 from the tree, the fruit-bearing tree, the seed is Messiah. Why? Because if his seed is in you, like I said, you will do the things he says to do. And you will love the things he loves, and you will hate the things that he hates. That is why he says, if you believe me, keep my commandments. When you read his commandments, you should see love. In John 8:56, it says, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. When did he see his day? Well, we saw it in him picturing the sacrifice of Isaac. We'll talk about that here in a minute as well. In Galatians 3:29, it says, and if you be Messiahs, then you are Abraham's seed. Why? Because that seed was Messiah, and heirs according to the promise. So if Messiah's seed is in you, if Messiah is in you, you are Abraham's seed, and you are heirs according to the promise. There's no stipulation there by what color you are, what blood runs through your vein, whether you're male or female. The stipulation is if Messiah is in you, you are Abraham's seed. So let's look at that timing. It says in Jubilees 16:12, and in the middle of the 6th month, Yahweh visited Sarah and did unto her as he had spoken, and she conceived. So she conceived in the middle of the 6th month. And she bore a son in the 3rd month, so 9 months later, and in the middle of the month. In the middle of the month. Well, what time is that? It goes on to tell us. At that time of which Yahweh had spoken to Abraham, on the feast of first fruits, or Shavuot, the feast of weeks, or the wheat harvest. This is when the promised son was born. This is very important, because are we not the promised children waiting to be born? I know many in the people of faith are teaching about the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah being the resurrection. But I will do a teaching on the resurrection. There's so much more to it. Just because Paul says at the last trump, everybody looks at the Feast of Trumpets, or they look at the Day of Atonement because trumpets were blown there. But what people don't realize is there was a Jubilee trumpet blown at certain times throughout the Scripture. And we'll look at that later in the resurrection teaching. I won't give that away here. So wait for that one to come. All right, well, let's look at these 2 covenants real quick. So we had Hagar, right, we saw, and we had Sarah. Hagar was a picture in her seed of the grass that withers and is cut off. Sarah is a picture of Yeshua's seed in people, and they going into eternity in the fruit tree. Ishmael had 12 princes, and Isaac went on to have Jacob, who had 12 tribes. Right? And what we're going to see is these are either believing or unbelieving. It's broken down into those 2 categories, and it's really that simple. Ishmael literally had 12 princes, but as an allegory, he is a picture also of the 12 tribes of Israel that are the unbelieving in the 12 tribes. And under Sarah, Jacob had 12 tribes, literally, but he's also symbolic of the eternal, believing 12 tribes. Okay? And this is the Old Covenant, right? Because at Mount Sinai, they didn't receive the Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit of Messiah, because they didn't believe. And so they were veiled from seeing the Messiah in all of their writings. And this is where the covenant, this Old Covenant, was given, and the priesthood changed. It was supposed to be, they were supposed to be a nation of priests, but because they sinned and they broke the covenant, it was given to the Levites. And then Sarah is a picture of the new covenant. And so we saw that from Galatians. That's nothing new. And it also told us that Hagar is Mount Sinai and the physical Jerusalem, whereas Sarah was Mount Zion and the Jerusalem above. We see that Hagar are those born of the flesh, right? The grass that withers away. It too has seed and continues on. But those who were born of the promise have the seed of Messiah in them, and they are waiting to be born and will be forever and eternal. And remember, it says that the children of the desolate one, Sarah, will be more than the children of the flesh. Okay, so she's going to have more. That means over 50% of the world will be believers, because she's going to have more than the children of the flesh. Because you only have two here, right? They are the children of the world, and Sarah are the children of the Father and of Yeshua. They are Hagar is cast off and her children, but Sarah has the children that are heir of the promise for eternity. Hagar are the unbelieving 12 tribes like we spoke of, and not all of Israel, the 12 tribes, were unbelieving. We know, right? We have many people, many believers that come out of the tribes of Israel. But the promises, all of the information, the Torah, everything was first given to Israel, and they were supposed to be a picture of the eternal. But they failed at that many times. And then Sarah is a picture of the believing 12 tribes. Hagar, a picture of the unbelieving Gentiles, and now we see that there were Gentiles that came into Israel, right? But we also see that believing Gentiles also get in. This is what the whole New Testament is about, right? And we just looked at that it doesn't matter what blood, what color your skin is, what gender you are. It is about the seed of Messiah being in you. And if he is in you, you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. They are the earthly seed of Hagar, and Sarah is the heavenly seed. Okay, let's continue looking at this, the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. So under Hagar and Ishmael, and the New Covenant, Sarah and Isaac, right? Earthly Jerusalem, heavenly Jerusalem. We mentioned that before. I just want to reiterate that because people don't seem to really grasp onto that. They keep looking at the Jerusalem that is here as the holy place and everything, but it's not. There literally, really is a heavenly Jerusalem, and Yeshua is sitting there at the right hand of the Father. We just cannot see it because we don't have eyes in these physical bodies that can see the invisible. But we know, it says one day, because we will be like him, for we will see him as he is. Right? And we've talked about this before. There are many animals out there that are created that can see into ultraviolet or infrared or the electromagnetic spectrum. We can't see those things, but these animals can. So we know it's possible. But our eyes are blinded from seeing those things. But in our new creation, our new body, we will be able to see it. And heavenly Jerusalem is there, and she's waiting for her children to be born. Under the Old Covenant, right, unbelieving physical Israel. Under the New Covenant, believing eternal Israel. Now they had the letter. They were given the letter, or the Torah. And this is where it's very important, because what people don't understand is the Old Covenant does not equal the Torah. The Old Covenant was found in the Torah, and when I say the Torah, it's the first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Okay? The first 5 books are the Torah, and the Old Covenant is found in the Torah, but the Old Covenant is not the whole Torah. Okay? Under the New Covenant, it's the letter and the Spirit. So what do I mean by that? Well, when they received the Torah, right? Let's look at charging interest. I use that one a lot. Right? The Torah tells us not to charge our people interest, and that's love. That's kindness. They already don't have money, and they need money, and you're going to give it to them, but you're going to make them pay you back more when they didn't have it in the first place. So that's why this whole world, Ezekiel calls charging interest an abomination, and that's what our whole world is about now, is charging interest. But today in Israel, they have taken the letter of the law, don't charge interest, and what they did is they skirt around it. Okay? They skirt around it by saying, okay, we will no longer write in our loans lender and borrower, but now we will write businessman and investor. So no longer are you a lender and a borrower, you're a businessman and investor. So they're skirting around the letter of the law, and that's why the Bible tells us that the letter kills, but the Spirit makes alive. Why? Because with the Spirit of Yeshua dwelling in you, you're going to see the love behind it, and you're going to lend and not even expect it back in return. That's what the New Testament tells us. That is what the tutor, which the Torah was, it was our tutor to lead us to the Spirit, because the Torah was the foundations of teaching us of who Yeshua is, right? The Bible says that Yeshua says that Moses wrote of him, of Yeshua. So the Torah is written about Yeshua. All those commandments, when it says don't do this or do this, it's because Yeshua wouldn't do it, or he would do it. And so that is the foundation to lead us into the Spirit. And so what I like to tell people is the letter of the law teaches us 2 plus 2, right? Everybody saw that commandment in school, right? 2 plus 2 equals 4. We all saw that, but not all of us saw 158,000 times 693,000. We might never have seen that problem, but because of the letter or the tutor, the Torah, we know how to solve that problem now. So the Torah taught us the first stages of what it means to love. And now with the Spirit of God, we can apply that to every situation in the world and be able to show love. All right. So I will do a teaching more in depth on that called No Longer Under the Law. But for now, I just wanted to reiterate that the Torah, one more thing I want to say about it, the commandments, the 10 commandments, right? If you read through the Torah, you're going to see that the 10 commandments were written on stone, and they were placed inside the ark, right? It's a picture of our heart because they had stony hearts. So the commandments were written on stone and placed in their heart because they had stony hearts. But the part of the new covenant is him writing the commandments on our heart, having a heart of flesh. Okay? But what's interesting is the rest of the Torah was not placed in the ark, it was placed on the outside of the ark. And for a long time I wondered why, until the Spirit gave me the understanding. It's because the 10 commandments, they apply to everyone. Man, woman, child, free, slave. Doesn't matter who you are, what nation you are, where you live, how old you are. They apply to everybody. Those are for everybody at all times. Okay, the first 5 commandments of the 10 are the first love. To love the Lord your God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the last 5 are to love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, the rest of the commandments in the Torah are to teach us how to love in other situations. So they're conditional. Do you have a farm or land? If you do, there's commandments in there for you. Are you a woman? If you are, there's commandments there for you, but not for men. Do you have slaves or employees or servants? There's commandments in there for you. So those are all conditional, meaning if you have this, then they apply. If you don't, they don't. Are you a priest? Well, then it doesn't apply to you. Okay? So, again, wait for my teaching, No Longer Under the Law, for that. Let's continue on. All right, the Aaronic priesthood was under the Old Covenant. Under the New Covenant is the Melchizedek priesthood, and we offer different offerings than they did, and we'll look at that here in a second. They had the works without faith, right? They were given the good works of the Torah, but they received it without faith, without belief. So they didn't receive the Ruach HaKodesh. So they walked the letter of the law without the Spirit. And we even talk about that today in our own laws, right? What is the intent behind the law? Or what is the love and most conservative response? They didn't do that. They just skirted around it. What was the letter? But we have faith with works, right? And we know that faith without works is dead. And he preordained the good works for us that we should walk in them. See, we would never have been able to figure out what's good and evil on our own. And the Torah teaches us that, what's good and what's evil in God's sight. And what he says is love. And what he says is love will always be love. What he says is evil will always be evil. In Hebrews 8:13 it says, "In that he saith, a new covenant he has made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away." Okay, it is ready to vanish away. When the temple went down, the old covenant went down. And I know a lot of people have issue with that, my Messianic brothers and sisters, because they are teaching out there that the new covenant is a renewed covenant, and we are supposed to be going back to those things. But the Bible nowhere teaches that. Those sacrifices that were in the old covenant were a picture of the heavenly. And yes, the heavenly will have sacrifices. We know that from Ezekiel, right? And I believe that Ezekiel 40 through the rest of Ezekiel is a picture of the millennial, eternal New Jerusalem, which will come down out of heaven. Okay? If you read the Old Covenant, before they broke it, they were still given all of the commands of the tabernacle, just not the priesthood yet. And so we know that under the old covenant, before they broke it, they were still going to have a temple or a tabernacle, and it was going to be a shadow of the heavenly. Because the heavenly one, there are sacrifices, and they will be there for eternity, we see, but not sacrifices for the atonement of saving us again, but there's going to be thanksgiving offerings and free will offerings and things like that. But I do not believe that we are waiting for a temple with sacrifices. Now, that's not to say that they won't build one or an altar. I think probably an altar is more likely of what they might build. But we are waiting for the heavenly. That's what the promise is all about. All right, let's continue looking at this real quick. So under the old covenant, they had the tabernacle and the temple. Under the new covenant, we are the temple, and we are waiting to enter into the temple, because we are stones being built up into the city, the New Jerusalem, which will be where our Father dwells. We will dwell with him and in him. Under the old covenant, they had the Torah, and it was in the ark, written on stone, the 10 Commandments. The rest of the Torah was on the outside. But we have the Torah now with the Spirit, and so the veil has been lifted for us, and we see Yeshua all through the Bible. Excuse me. They had the blood of animals, we have the blood of Yeshua. They washed the outside, but we wash the outside and the inside, right? They had physical sacrifice, we have spiritual sacrifice, and we'll talk more about that in the New Covenant teaching when I go more in depth. Spiritual sacrifices have to do with, prayer, thanksgiving, singing, dancing, blowing shofars, calling out to God. These are acceptable sacrifices to him. They drew near by the blood of animals, right? Because they did not receive the Spirit of God, so they had to draw near with the blood of animals and going into the temple. Well, we draw near by going boldly before the throne of grace, because we have the Spirit of God dwelling in us, right? And we talked about this earlier. All men have the Spirit of God dwelling in them that gives them life and what we would call emotions and feelings, but they come from the Spirit of God, which the Bible calls spiritual and spirit. So Not all men, though, have the Ruach HaKodesh, which gives the wisdom, understanding, knowledge, counsel, might, fear of God, and he is the Spirit of truth, and it's the Spirit of Yeshua. Right? They didn't receive the Spirit. We have the Spirit within us. And they had a shadow of the true, but under the new covenant, the true promise is Yeshua and the eternal kingdom. Right? And so remember with Jeremiah 31:31, it says, "Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they broke, although I was a husband unto them." In Hebrews it says, "But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for a second." So it's not a renewed covenant. This is a new and better covenant upon better promises. It is different. The old covenant was with those that could not receive the Ruach HaKodesh because of unbelief. Under the new covenant, we receive the Ruach HaKodesh as a guarantee, a down payment, a promise that we will be born and enter into New Jerusalem, Sarah, the mother of us all. In Hebrews it says, "And for this cause he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first covenant, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance." Again, it's all about the promise of the eternal inheritance. And right there it says First Testament, but it's the same word. Covenant, New Testament, or First Testament, First Covenant. In Ephesians it says that at that time you were without Messiah, right? Being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel. Why? Because you were under the seed of the world. You were under the covenant of Hagar. And transgressors from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Messiah Yeshua, you who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Messiah, because the Messiah, his Spirit, dwells in you. Now therefore you are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints in the household of God. In 1 Peter 2:10 it says, "Which in time past you were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Who also has made us able ministers," we are priests, "of the new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life." So remember, before, Israel in Mount Sinai was supposed to be a nation of priests. But when they broke the covenant, they were now given the old covenant, and Levi became the priesthood. Under the new covenant, we are all priests under the order of Melchizedek, and Yeshua is our high priest. Alright, so let's finish this up. We looked at creation day 3, the physical day 3. The waters under the heaven were gathered together unto one place. We saw that at the Tower of Babel, all the people under heaven were gathered together under one place at Babel. He said on literal day 3, "Let dry land appear." We saw on millennial day 3, he took Abraham and he showed him the land, and the earth and the land appeared to him. On literal day 3, we saw the waters under the heaven. He then called seas, and we saw the people under the heaven that he made into nations and changed their languages. On day 3, he said it was good. And then he said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed after his kind." We saw as a picture of the old covenant, or Hagar and Ishmael and the 12 princes. But then he also gave the fruit tree, the seed, after his kind. Right? And that's Yeshua is that seed, and those that are his kind will do the things that he does, because a fruit will bear the fruit of the tree. And so if Yeshua is the seed, then we should grow up and bear fruit, the same fruit that he would. That's why we're supposed to keep his commandments. because you shall know them by their fruit. We will look like him. All right, last thing we'll say here is the third letter in the Hebrew alphabet is the Gamal, and this is what the ancient Hebrew looks like, and its meaning means to gather. And all the people were gathered together into one place, all the waters were gathered together into one place. All right, finishing up. So the first 2,000 years, or the first age, was the age of creation, the age of chaos, the age of wickedness and destruction. And then we're starting here in the second age, or the third day, the third millennium, and we got a physical picture of physical Israel. They received the letter. It was by stone. They received the works, but they didn't have the faith. They didn't receive the Spirit. We'll talk about day 4. This is when Yeshua comes next time. And then after that, we will hit the New Covenant teaching and go more in depth on that. So if you have questions about that, or you disagree with some of the things that I said with that, wait till that teaching comes out, watch it, and then we can chat about it. But after Yeshua comes, it was the day which we are in now. We're in day 6 right now, millennial day 6. And it's the times that the Gentiles are being grafted in. It's the times the Ruach HaKodesh is poured out. The commandments are being written on our heart. Ultimately, they will be written on our heart, and our hearts are being circumcised, and ultimately in the new body, they will be completely circumcised, and the evil will be cut off. And we do this all with faith and hope, because we are under the new covenant, Sarah, the New Jerusalem. We are waiting to be able to be born. Remember, it says in Hosea, speaking of Yeshua, I will go and return to my place, right? Because he came from the Father, he went back to the Father. He came from eternal, put on mortal, and then put back on the eternal. Till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. In their affliction they will seek me early. Come and let us return unto Yahweh, for he hath torn us, and he will heal us up. He hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days, after the 2,000 years millennium, he will revive us, or resurrect us. And in the third day he will raise us up, resurrect us, and we shall live in his sight. And he said to my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make your enemy your footstool. Hasatan will be cast down to the earth, which is God's footstool. Whom the heaven must receive, speaking of Yeshua, until the times of restitution, all things need to be restored. Of all things which God hath spoken by the mouth of all his holy prophets since the world began. Right? After the flood, the world was changed, and we're waiting for things to change back. And Moses went down from the mountain, just as Yeshua came down from heaven, unto the people, and sanctified the people, and washed them, and they washed their clothes. Yeshua sanctified us, and we're washing our clothes by his blood and his Ruach HaKodesh. And he said unto the people, be ready against the third day, come not at your wives. And so Yeshua went back up and told us to be ready for the third day, right? We're waiting for him to return on the third day, which is the Messianic kingdom, where we will reign for 1,000 years. And then after that 1,000 years, Hasatan will be released, and then he will be cast out forever, and we will have on the 8th day eternal life, new heaven, new earth, no darkness, no night, no evil, no pain, no tears, no sorrow, no war, no death, no sin, no knowledge of good and evil, no sea, and no Satan. It will be good and perfect, and that 8th day will continue on for eternity. All right, with that said, brothers and sisters, let me leave you with a blessing. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace.